We are investigating that as we speak, aren't we?
But we are indeed.
Speaking of the border, you were just down in Juarez, correct?
We were, and you know, I was in Ciudad Juarez, as our viewers know, and it is such a big part of the news cycle now because on Friday the House introduced a resolution to vote against the President's National Declaration, and we will get a vote on Tuesday morning in Washington.
Yeah, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi talking about the pushback on President Trump's resolution. Listen to this.
On Monday, we will send to the Rules Committee the resolution of disapproval of the President's actions. We say that not in any partisan way. We not say it in any political way. We say it in a patriotic way.
President Trump knew this was coming when he declared this national emergency and signed the funding bill. He talked about getting sued. He talked about pushback from Democrats and talked about how he hasn't had any help from them when it comes to putting forward a plan. I find it interesting that they're spending all of this time to come up with a resolution to condemn the actions, but they're not spending time on any kind of bill to actually move immigration reform forward.
Well, and it's also a bit of a futile point because the president said, I'm going to veto that as soon as it happens. Take a listen.
Will I veto it? 100%. 100%. And I don't think it survives a veto. We have too many smart people that want border security, so I can't imagine it could survive a veto, but I will veto it, yes.
Yeah, I mean, we have to remember that despite Nancy Pelosi saying this is not partisan, this is not political, the vote or the decision to put this to a vote on Tuesday is both partisan and political. Just take a look at the lines, you know?
Great point. Great point, because if you looked at that Speaker Pelosi soundbite, she's in Laredo, Texas, right? That's right there on the U.S.-Mexico border. And then there was a delegation from the House Democrats and the House Homeland Security Committee, actually in El Paso, right across from me, seeing what's going on the border. So when they come, in the case of the Democrats that came to El Paso, there is a 470% increase from last year in total number of apprehensions. Will we hear from that committee and those Democrats that they went and saw the problem that it is? Will they call it a crisis? We'll find out.
Well, and that's the question. If they don't think that it's a crisis, then what would they classify it as? We've heard continually about inhumane conditions inside of these ICE detention centers because they are overflowing with people. Border Patrol continually saying, look, we don't have enough room for families that are continuing to come over here. And because the bar for asylum is still very low in terms of the first initial claim, people are still abusing that. And so Congress hasn't put forward any solutions yet to fix the asylum fraudulent claim problem, and they also haven't done anything to make sure that Central Americans can be turned away and deported immediately, just like illegal immigrants from Mexico.
And we have all morning long to delve into your experiences at the border, but you're an amazing resource because you've been down there so much more than any other journalist right now. What is the sense that you're getting? How does this all come to a head?
Well, it comes to a head when you have a bipartisan solution to what is an undeniable increase in traffic, increase existing on the border and deployment. Another 1,000 troops are being sent this coming week. By March 1st, you will have a total of 6,000. They will serve in an advisory, in a capacity that will support the efforts of our Border Patrol. Because when you have 1,000 people come over, many of them are family units, they have to be processed. That's agents off of the line, agents whose job is to stop the entry, the illegal entry, having to come back. In some cases, they're sick, they have to be dealt with or given care. It's a resource issue, and so at some point, to answer your question, it's going to have to be a bipartisan solution that deals with it.
While the president is sending more troops to the U.S. border to do things like bolster the infrastructure and the barriers that are already there, Julian Castro says that it makes sense to take some walls down. Listen to this.
We have 654 miles of fencing already out of 1,994 miles of the border. And so would it surprise me if there are places where it makes sense to take some of that down? No.
And if you think this is an isolated view, when I was down in El Paso and I was in Miami talking with the anti-Trump protesters, I asked them point blank, should we tear down borders? Should we tear down walls? Should we tear down everything? To a man and to a woman, they all said yes.
Yeah, there's agreement also amongst the migrants in the caravan. We asked many of them, some on the air, whether they wanted to see the wall come down, and they thought that was a good idea.
They probably don't want the wall to come down. But switching gears here a little bit, the Green New Deal has been in the news a lot. It's a proposal that's been put into real legislation. Senator Dianne Feinstein was in her office with a bunch of people, children, who wanted to talk to her about the Green New Deal, and listen to how she responded to them wanting her to vote for it.
We're trying to promote the Green New Deal.
Well, there are reasons why I can't.
because there's no way to pay for it. You just can't go in and say, okay, we're going to take hundreds of millions from here and hundreds of millions from there. It just doesn't work that way.
Some scientists have said that we have 12 years to turn this around.
Well, it's not going to get turned around in 10 years. What we can do,
Senator, if this doesn't get turned around in 10 years, you're looking at the faces of the people who are going to be living with these consequences.
You come in here and you say it has to be my way or the highway. I don't respond to that. I was elected by almost 1 million vote plurality, and I know what I'm doing. So, you know, maybe people should listen a little bit.
These kids, who let these kids in my office?
Oh, come on.
They knew too many things.
I feel sorry for Senator Dianne Feinstein. Whatever the politics are, she's explaining her job to children who have been persuaded by some of the more outrageous, irrational statements made about what this Green Deal.
You know what kids are good at? Memorizing lines. And they clearly were memorizing some talking points that have been sent out about the 12 years and we're doomed kind of thing. Yeah. I mean, they clearly gave them a sheet of paper and said, say these things to Dianne Feinstein.
But, you know, the serious side of what we just watched is, and I have 2 teenage daughters, I've watched in their generation, the movement that started with getting rid of straws. I thought it was the most preposterous thing ever, but this documentary that showed that, you know, there's straws are the worst thing in the world. Now you go many places, can't get straws.
That's true.
Here's what Dianne Feinstein had to say about this brouhaha, which I think is the most uncomfortable piece of TV we will see all morning. She writes, I want the children from the Sunrise Movement to know they were heard loud and clear. I have been and remain committed to doing everything I can to enact real, meaningful climate change legislation. Let's not forget that she does herself have 7 grandkids. And I want to pose this one little thing to the kids, not to be mean to children, but how did you get to Senator Feinstein's office? Was it by car?
Right.
Was it by plane? Your activities that you go to, going to school and everything? Do you get driven by car? Would you rather walk? I mean, these are things that these kids need to be told because there's a reality of the situation, and it is you kind of need a car.
Well, and Senator Feinstein's doing the right thing. I mean, with all due respect to the kids,
right.
You know, we're not going to implement an entire Green New Deal because kids want us to. I mean, there are real debates to be had about the environment and climate change, as people say, but we're not going to do that based on kids who come in with talking points into congressional offices on Capitol Hill.
Right, and as the father of children who pays for a lot of things for your children, because that's what parents do, you have to look at these kids should be talking about the economy and the impact that a Green Deal could have on impacting the economy, which, by the way, if you look at this week, Yahoo Finance, let's show you this headline. Dow's 9-week winning streak is the longest in nearly 24 years.
That's right,
Put it up
Griff.
there in a second. There we go. CNBC, the stock market rally to start 2019 is one for the history books. You just don't see kids coming to Washington to talk about economic issues, do you?
We should send kids to Capitol Hill to talk about will the Dow hit 27K at some point soon. That would be an awesome number and would show how good the Trump economy is doing, save for a little blip last fall.
Well, as a child who was interested in politics, I applaud these children for being involved. But I would say that we can't be, based on the things that I probably advocated for when I was a kid.
What did you advocate for?
Free outdoors all the time for
it.
everybody. More treats for
Well,
all the puppies.
And
all the
hard-boiled
things.
eggs.
And hard-boiled eggs.
Email us
Don't steal each other's lunch. It's
Email
not
us
very nice.
give your thoughts now. Email us at friends@foxnews.com. Are you teaching your kids about the Green Deal or about the economy or something else? We want to know.
Yeah, we want to know what they are. All right, well, turning now to some of your headlines. Embattled music star R. Kelly is expected in court today after turning himself into police overnight. He's behind bars in Chicago on 10 counts of criminal sexual abuse charges for accusations dating back more than 2 decades. The indictment coming just weeks after a Lifetime docuseries detailing several allegations against him. Kelly has denied the claims. The owner of the New England Patriots is charged with soliciting sex. Bob Kraft allegedly videotaped paying prostitutes at a spa in Jupiter, Florida. His spokesperson releasing a statement, quote, "We categorically deny that Mr. Kraft engaged in any illegal activity." The 77-year-old billionaire is among 25 people charged in the sting. A warrant for Kraft's arrest will be issued this week. And actor Jussie Smollett is being removed from the final 2 episodes of Empire. This as Smollett now claims he has an untreated drug problem. Prosecutors believe he may try to use the claimed addiction to get a reduced sentence. The actor faces a felony charge for allegedly staging a possible hate crime hoax in Chicago. Police say he orchestrated the assault to advance his career. And President Trump and Kim Jong-un impersonators are detained in Vietnam ahead of the U.S.-North Korea summit. The Kim Jong-un impersonator claimed police threatened to deport them because they were causing a disturbance. Both have since been released. Police questioned impersonators during the North Korea summit last year. In Singapore, the real President Trump and Kim Jong-un will meet in Hanoi on Wednesday and Thursday. And those are your headlines.
It
is a little distracting to have some impersonators there.
We're going to be covering that thing.
Would serve. And people are responding to that from south of the border. You know, there's work here. If you can get across the border, there's great work, and they're coming. And we can see they're coming in big numbers.
But what about the asylum part of this? Because as we've seen the surge, that people aren't coming and saying, I'm coming for a job. They come to the border and say that they're seeking asylum. And so do the laws, as we were talking about before the segment, do the laws on the books encourage this type of illegal immigration for economic reasons, but is it done based on a false premise?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is. I don't think all of it is, but a lot of it is people want to come up for a better life. A better life includes being more safe, right? But I think that the drivers are primarily economic. The people who come up are going to play the games by the rules as they're enforced, not as they're written. So if they can see that they can use asylum as a method, they're going to use that. So you have to be very careful when you draft laws, and because people will use the means available.
So the goal is the same, which is a better life, whether you're in Honduras, El Salvador, or Guatemala. Let me show you the numbers here. 381,000 potential illegal immigrants crossing into the U.S. undetected. That's 2018.
Right.
You say that it's going to be incredibly larger than that number right there because of this reason. So when you hear some politicians say that there is no crisis, that this isn't happening, how do you respond?
Well, it is happening. So we had a down period really from the Great Recession from 2008, 2007 until 2018. And you can see that in remittances back to Mexico. There was a whole 10-year lost decade for illegal migrants, too. And that's why they drifted out of the country. But that really ended last summer. We can see remittances now are at a new all-time high, passing the 2007 level. There are a lot of jobs, and they're beginning to come back. So that's why we see these numbers building back now to actually pre-recession levels. And we think that in 2019, we'll be back at 2008 levels, so at levels before the Obama administration. And they're just responding to the fact that the U.S. has a very strong economy.
So what is the policy solution to solving this problem?
Well, I mean, we have a solution that's different from everybody else's, right? Our view is that illegal immigration is a black market. The U.S. has never beaten any black market of any kind, whether that's drugs or gambling or prostitution. And the best way to do it is to legalize it and tax it. And we've done that successfully. We did it in '33 with repeal of prohibition. We did that with gambling, right? So now we have Atlantic City and Las Vegas and Mega Millions. And we're doing it now with marijuana in a sort of semi-chaotic way, but making progress. And for example, here we can see at the border, the seizures of marijuana in the unsecured border have fallen by 60%.
It's crazy. There's 1,000-pound days coming across the border. Stephen Kopits, thank you very much for bringing us.
Thank you very much.
We'll have you back when we have some hard numbers later in the year.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
A ruthless attack on a college campus caught on camera, and while police work to identify the attacker, it's far from the first time that conservatives have been targeted. We take a look at the disturbing trend that happens far too often on campuses up next.
And this boy gets creative, turning some quick headlines for you. President Trump nominating the U.S. ambassador to Canada, Kelly Nightcraft, to be the next UN ambassador. The president tweeting in part, Kelly has done an outstanding job representing our nation, and I have no doubt that under her leadership, our country will be represented at the highest level. She will replace Nikki Haley, who resigned last year. And the president's administration is banning tax-funded family planning clinics from promoting and performing abortions. The move potentially blocking centers like Planned Parenthood from receiving millions of dollars in federal funding. The policy is expected to be
free speech if you agree with said free speech.
That's exactly right. I commonly say the left hates the idea that there are other ideas, and this is getting very serious. I mean, look, all violence should be denounced by everyone, but in a week where there was a lot of coverage about a fake hate crime in Chicago, there was a real hate crime out at University of California, Berkeley, and you saw that horrendous footage where there was a conservative activist at our turning point. The harassment and also just the retaliation from the leftist people on campus that try to prevent us from being there in the first place.
But Charlie, this isn't just happening on college campuses. You, of course, were confronted with Candace Owens in Philadelphia last year. Let's take a listen to that and then talk about it. So, Charlie, those were violent Antifa protesters running you guys out of a cafe. Is this getting worse when it comes to college campuses and just conservatives in general being able to just go about their daily lives in America and have their own belief system?
Yeah, I'm afraid that unless the left gets called out for this ridiculous behavior, it is getting worse. And so what's so scary about this example at University of California, Berkeley, is that a staff member for the confrontation, but we're also not going to allow the leftist mob to get away with using physical intimidation against conservative students. And look, we have so many people out there that just want to be able to grow chapters around the ideas of free markets and limited government without having to get punched in the face.
A real debate.
That's exactly
rather
right.
than any physical confrontation.
Here's what Berkeley had to say. UC Berkeley's commitment to freedom of expression and perspective is unwavering, as is its intolerance for violence and harassment. What's your response to that statement?
Well, they're saying the right thing, but now they need to be doing the right thing. Are they really teaching tolerance of other people's views? And I always like to say the most intolerant people in the world that you're going to find are liberals preaching tolerance. Right. And we see that time and time again where, you know, they're very tolerant of things on the left, but when a conservative comes on campus, not so much. And we'll see. I might be visiting there next week. I might be making some news right now, so I might be going to see how tolerant UC Berkeley actually is.
Okay.
Be safe. We'll be challenging on their home turf.
Charlie
you better
Kirk,
believe it.
Thank you for all you do. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, Charlie.
And be safe.
Thanks, Katie. You bet. Thank you.
All right, well, 3 top Democratic presidential candidates signaling support for reparations for African Americans, but Elizabeth Warren wants to take it a step further.
Plus, he literally won the Heisman Trophy and then turned into a baseball star. He's the one on the left. We're talking about Tim Tebow.
Shot in the morning in the home of the Patriots. A basketball crowd doesn't miss a beat during the national anthem.
The show of patriotism happened because the gym speakers blew out.
Yeah, this was at a high school playoff game in San Antonio, Texas. We love showing these types of displays of patriotism, especially when the team's name is the Patriots.
Yeah, that's the best part. It says it
mascot.
above them. You know, you just see Patriots and you hear them doing it. But you had a big interview.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun earlier this week. Remember, we were down in Miami, did a diner segment in Miami on Tuesday, and then Tuesday afternoon, we went on up to Port St. Lucie, which is the home of Mets spring training baseball, and there we got a chance to interview one of our favorites here on Fox and Friends, Tim Tebow. We talked about a lot of things, from baseball to faith to his new movie. We asked a few more questions. Check it out. Spring training is here. How does it feel to be back with the boys?
It feels really good. Every team has the hope that this is their year. Or, you know, their minor leaguers are going to come up and help their team. It's only been a couple of days so far, but it's so much fun. I mean, look at this weather. We're playing a great game. I mean, it's awesome.
Was there something part of your game right now that you're saying, hey, this is going to be top shelf in 2019?
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things that we're striving for, but I think it's just in every area to get just a little bit better. That 1% in every area, and when you look back, if you do that, then you've made up a lot of ground.
While your colleagues here at spring training camp were practicing during the fall, you have another job as college football analyst.
Yeah.
Put down the slogans because they don't work, all right? You know what works? It's called heart.
So you had a unique training regimen when you were on the road.
I train everywhere I went and bring coaches with me. But that's part of my life. I travel and speak and share and go on a lot of mission trips, so you find a way to train in those situations.
You've been unabashed in bringing your faith to your game, be it football, be it baseball, be it life. How do you reconcile that with the world around us that right now is somewhat anti-religion?
I don't know if I try to bring it with me. I think it's just who I am. I'm a Jesus follower and I love him. Hopefully that's something that people can respect, because if you believe in something that much, it's going to come out in your actions, and hopefully that's something people can see.
You decided that...
I'm going to tell you that you won't, that you can't, that you shouldn't. Most of those people are the people that didn't, that wouldn't, that couldn't.
Why do you think there's been this groundswell of support for your words?
Hopefully it resonates with people. Why am I going to let someone else define me? Why am I going to let something that may or may not happen define me? Even if you don't get back to the big leagues, to the show, it's still worth it for me for so many reasons. 1, because I get to do what I love. 2, because I don't have to live with regret. 3, because I tried it, and regardless of what happens, I gave it my all. It's not just about if you make it or if you don't. That's not proving people wrong. Proving people wrong is that I get to go enjoy it every day, and I get to enjoy the journey, not just if I make it here or not.
You are clearly the most famous Florida Gator. Number 2 on that list is Steve Spurrier, asking you to play in the Alliance of American Football, want you to be his quarterback. Is there any chance you're giving up all this for the old ball coach?
No. I love Coach Spurrier. I think he's a great coach. I think it's a really good league. I think you're going to get a handful of players most every year to go from that league to the NFL. It's going to make that league more successful, just like the minors are for baseball. And I think the league's going to be successful, but I'm all in baseball right now, and I'm a Met. Let's go Mets.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Huge props to the 3rd most famous Florida Gator, Nicky Del Castillo, for putting that piece together. Great job, Nicky. A couple things. Last night was the opening of Tim Tebow's movie. We're curious to see how it does throughout the course of the weekend. And today, Game 1, Mets spring training against the Braves.
You know, that was a great package. What I think a lot of viewers are thinking is, are we going to see him play for the Mets? And then after watching that and all the things he's involved in, and of course being true and steadfast to his message, spreading his message of his faith, is it your sense that he's maybe got too many things on his plate?
I think if anybody can handle all those things, it's him, because he's really good at all those things. He's learning how to be good at baseball, and the reports are from a lot of people in the know that in September, when those rosters expand to 40 people from 25, that he could get a call-up, and then Citi Field's going to be rocking. Guarantee they sell out every single game.
It'll be fun to watch, and he just recently got engaged.
Yes.
So congratulations to him.
I asked him what was harder, engaging or hitting a curve. He said, hitting a curve way.
All right. Well, turning now to some of your headlines. A manhunt intensifying for this illegal immigrant accused of killing an unborn baby in a hit-and-run. Surveillance cameras capturing him buying beer at a Florida store just hours before the crash. Police believe he was drunk when he slammed into a woman 8 months pregnant. She is okay. Authorities say he doesn't have a driver's license and was deported from the U.S. in 2000. And Senator Elizabeth Warren makes another race-based pitch to voters. The 2020 presidential candidate suggesting both Native American and African Americans should get reparations for America's, quote, ugly history of racism.
We need to confront it head on, and we need to talk about the right way to address it and make change.
Kamala Harris and Julian Castro have also called for reparations. And PETA is getting slammed for making disrespectful comments about the late Steve Irwin. The organization blasting Google's doodle celebrating the crocodile hunter and what would have been his 57th birthday. PETA tweeting, Steve Irwin was killed while harassing a ray. He dangled his baby while feeding a crocodile and wrestled wild animals who were minding their own business. Today's Google doodle sends a dangerous fawning message. Wild animals are entitled to be left alone in their natural habitats. PETA always making people happy. And a young boy uses the camera on his doorbell to ask his dad a very important question. The best video you'll see all day.
Dad? Dad?
How's it going, man?
How do you turn on the kids channel?
How do you turn on the kids channel?
Yes, how do you turn on?
The power button.
The dad away from home telling the Michigan boy how to turn on the kids channel. The boy ends the call by telling his father he loves him. The little boy wasn't home alone. His mother was at the neighbor's house. And those are your headlines. Smart kid. Technology these days,
yeah.
You know?
Connect anyway. Hey, so Rick, you got the blue time memo.
Yeah.
I like that.
I did.
And Charlie Kirk did too. I think Kirk and I were wearing the same tie.
I mean, it's kind of probably happens, what, 80% of the time?
True.
Really, we all wear a blue tie, let's be honest. All right, here you go. Temps across much of the southeast, still warm. This right here is this kind of fighting battle line, though, with some really heavy rain, and that rain has been with us all week long. Had some spots here up to 10 inches of rain has caused incredible flooding. Take a look at the pictures coming out of Forsyth County, Georgia. A water rescue had to be done right there. And that is not the only place. We're seeing scenes like this headed into major flooding across better parts, the northern part at least, of Mississippi, Alabama, into Tennessee and parts of Georgia. It's going to continue to go on today. The flood expanse is really large across parts of the Virginias, all the way down towards parts of the Mississippi Valley. The other problem we're going to have today is a tornado threat, and we could be looking at a few large, long-track tornadoes anywhere you see these hatch marks. But that bullseye of it there, right in the red, a moderate risk issued by the Storm Prediction Center. That doesn't happen all that often. So a really rough day right where the flooding was. Now we've got tornado threat today. Guys?
All right. Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
While Jussie Smollett claims he's innocent, the media is now blaming President.
Well, Jussie Smollett cut from the remaining season of Empire, yet still maintaining his innocence after police accused him of staging a hate crime on himself. Yet somehow the media is turning this scandal on President Trump and his supporters.
It also contributes to the Trumpian narrative that anything that is negative about him is not real. It's created by people on the left who are staging this drama.
I feel bad for the people who did not default to that empathy, gloating today. Those people have something fundamentally wrong with them.
I don't think this is the opportunity or the time for everybody to say, "Oh my gosh, so sorry, you guys." Who would ever think that of the MAGA crowd?
Here to react, Fox News political analyst and Chicago native Gianna Caldwell. Gianna, what is your response to them now turning this back around on Trump supporters who were initially blamed for this hate crime?
Jussie Smollett's plan, although it was a hoax, is obviously working. This was the intention from the very beginning. I got to be honest with you, Katie, knowing that I'm from Chicago and I'm actually sitting in Chicago today, realizing that there are legitimate victims of hate crime, and knowing that there is an African-American man of such great influence.
Report like this come out where you think, like, okay, we've got it. No, we don't. Yet again, there's another layer that shows how for years they have been manipulating us, getting information out of us. For many people, especially millennials, they say, oh, I don't care. I have nothing to hide. You have nothing to hide until later this information suddenly gets sold to, for example, an insurance company. And you go to buy a life insurance policy and they say, you know, it's going to be extra expensive for you, or we're not going to insure you altogether. Sorry, you're not available. Why? Well, you know, we don't disclose that, but here is, and they're gathering information about us to tell us what their risk level is for investing in an insurance policy for us. That's just one.
I know what I'm doing.
Dow's 9-week winning streak is the longest in nearly 24 years.
Battle music star R. Kelly is expected in court today after turning himself into police overnight. He's behind bars in Chicago on 10 counts of criminal sexual abuse charges. The owner of the New England Patriots is charged with soliciting sex. Bob Kraft allegedly videotaped paying prostitutes in Florida.
Isn't $10 million enough? At what point is it immoral? Maybe we shouldn't be eating a hamburger for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
If socialism, vegetarianism, and reparations are the campaign theme for the eventual Democratic nominee, it sounds like Donald Trump will win.
President Trump and Kim Jong-un impersonators are detained in Vietnam ahead of the U.S.-North Korea summit. Furry suspect. And we found who stole my breakfast this morning, and he looks a little guilty, so I think I can forgive him.
From that news to something that's actually really, really, really serious and seriously serious, Fox News confirming Robert Mueller's report will not be released while President Trump is at his second North Korea summit in Vietnam.
This coming as the showdown over the president's national emergency heats up in Washington.
That's where we find Garrett Tinney joining us live with more on the president's plans to veto a Democratic effort on that resolution. Garrett, good morning. How are you?
Hey, good morning, y'all. So a lot of folks have been saying for more than a year now that the special counsel's investigation is coming to a close, but that may now actually be the case. A source familiar with the special counsel's investigation told Fox News this week that it is near the end game. However, a senior official at the Justice Department tells us they are not expecting to receive their Mueller report next week, saying any reporting that special counsel Mueller's report will be delivered to the Department of Justice next week are incorrect. On Friday, President Trump was asked if he's discussed the release of the Mueller report with newly confirmed Attorney General William Barr.
There was no collusion. There was no obstruction. There was no anything. So that's the nice part. There was no phone calls, no nothing. I won a race. You know why I won the race? Because I was a better candidate than she was, and had nothing to do with Russia. And everybody knows it's a hoax. It's one of the greatest hoaxes ever perpetrated on this country. So I look forward to seeing the report. If it's an honest report, it will say that.
While the Mueller report is not expected to be released next week while the president is in Vietnam, House Democrats are planning to try and block his national emergency declaration to build the border wall. A piece of legislation to do that is expected to easily pass the House on Tuesday before it heads to the GOP-controlled Senate, where Republicans will face a lot of pressure to back up President Trump. However, even if it passes the Senate and heads to the White House, the president has said he will absolutely veto the legislation if it comes to his desk. Back to y'all.
All right.
Garrett Tenney, thank you.
We'll be talking about that. It'll be interesting to see what the Senate does.
Yeah. Which Republicans, I think, will come over.
Susan Collins is one.
Mike Lee, even, who has said
Really?
this is he believes it's legal based on what Congress has ceded to the executive branch in terms of power, but he does believe that it's unconstitutional.
And Lisa Murkowski as well. Look for her to...
But do you think that that's honestly what they truly believe, or is this just a concession because they're those on-the-fence GOP senators?
Right. Well, the president hopefully will not have to veto that while he's overseas in Vietnam for the summit next week with Kim Jong-un. This is the second summit that they will be having to talk about denuclearization of North Korea. So that is something the president has on his plate for next week. And also with the Mueller report, we also have breaking news on that it will be released at some point,
Yes,
but it will
in the
not be
future.
next week.
Right.
In the future sometime, it will end up being released.
And actually, the Attorney General Barr doesn't even have it. We even get that confirmation.
Let's let him take a look at it first. I think that would be a
Goes to him
smart call.
first.
Obviously, we've been talking about the Green New Deal for a couple of weeks now, talking about how this may not be financially feasible because it requires trillions upon trillions of dollars. Well, a bunch of kids decided to confront Senator Dianne Feinstein, a Democrat, in her office about what they perceived as a lack of her support for the Green New Deal. They came armed with some memorized lines, and here's what all went down.
We're trying to promote the Green New Deal.
Well, there are reasons why I can't, because there's no way to pay for it. You just can't go in and say, okay, we're going to take hundreds of millions from here and hundreds of millions from there. It just doesn't work that way.
Some scientists have said that we have 12 years to turn this around.
Well, it's not going to get turned around in 10 years. What we can do,
Senator, if
is
this
put
doesn't get turned around
ourselves-
in 10 years, you're looking at the faces of the people who are going to be living with these consequences.
You come in here and you say it has to be my way or the highway. I don't respond to that. I was elected by almost 1 million vote plurality, and I know what I'm doing. So, maybe people should listen a little bit.
I wonder if the kids know what plurality means. But that video and the organization of those children was done by the Sunrise Movement, which is an organization that is dedicated to building an army of young people to make climate change an urgent priority across America. So Dianne Feinstein, I think, handled it pretty well, considering she is the adult. And these are children, and they do have concerns, but they are children.
And an important voice, but, she's getting some flack for it. Let me put up a tweet from someone you may remember, Brian Fallon. Now, he's a former Clinton campaign spokesman. He's talking about this. He says, the kids in the Die-Fi video rightfully don't give an expletive about PAYGO or 60 vote thresholds in the Senate. They just want to confront climate change. If you're running for president this year, you better see the world through the kids' eyes, not Die-Fi's.
All right.
Ouch.
Yeah.
That's not very nice.
Here's what Dianne had to say about all this in response. She goes, I want the children from the Sunrise Movement to know they were heard loud and clear. I have been and remain committed to doing everything I can to enact real, meaningful climate change legislation. But you mentioned earlier, these kids came in there with scripted lines. And let's remember, every time you see a union protest, 75 to 80% of the people that are out there protesting are paid.
Right.
When you go see one of these Antifa protests, a lot of those guys are being paid by organizations to go out there. These kids may or may not be getting paid. We don't know, but it's clear these kids were set up with talking points to go in there and do this. We all agree. We all live on this earth. We don't want it to go away. But it's not financially realistic to do it all in 10 years. We need to come up with solutions, but that's just more lunacy.
Well, that's the point, right? If now the choice is if you're not for the Green New Deal, you're against the environment, and you're not willing to address environmental issues. That's just not true. And even if you're someone who is a Democrat who believes in climate change, you can look at the Green New Deal and say, this is not the way to go about real meaningful efforts to actually clean up the environment and will destroy the U.S. economy along the way. But I do know that kids like hamburgers.
Yes.
And in the Green New Deal, you're not allowed to eat hamburgers at all. So
I'm not okay with
I don't
that.
know if they know about that. But I think they might be against it if
What about
they learn
salads?
about that. Salads you are allowed to eat in the Green New Deal. Mostly
Yes,
because
we
they're
need to
green.
get to that story.
Are you ready? Well, if we're going to be talking salads, if you'll excuse me, I need to get out my comb.
Okay.
And you're probably
Why
like,
is
what
that?
are we talking about? Well, it turns out the Minnesota Senator, Amy Klobuchar, or Klobuchar, depending upon how you want to say it. We've talked about how she got in a little bit of trouble for being too mean, too caustic with her staff over the course of her many years in politics. Well, there's a new New York Times article called How Amy Klobuchar Treats Her Staff, and it reads as follows. Here's the relevant quote. She pulled a comb from her bag and began eating the salad with it, according to 4 people familiar with the episode.
Yuck.
Thank you. Thank you, Toba. Then she handed the comb to her staff member with a directive, clean it.
Okay, but the reason why this happened is because her staffer failed to bring on the proper plastic utensils to eat the salad.
They fell.
So they fell.
They fell on the ground.
So she got upset that she didn't have anything to eat it with, and she ate it with a comb, allegedly. And you know what? She's innovative.
Listen, exactly.
At least she eat with her hands.
I mean, there's some real initiative right there. So she's running late. She has a crazy schedule. She's starving to death. Probably hadn't eaten all day.
Right.
Which is why she was
gets
upset.
on this plane with the salad. She just wants to eat it. She's like, what have I got? What can I do? Reaches in her purse, and like you, I've got a utensil.
Oh, you got one too.
I can find something to
We're
sleep with.
prepared for
We're all prepared with
salad.
anchor props.
Then the fault is that she asked the staffer, could you clean it? Now, you know, in fairness, those moments of being on the road, being on the run, doing whatever, I'm not sure this amounts to being worthy of a front-page New York Times article that says how horrible this person is.
But to Katie's point, none of this happens if we're allowed to just eat hamburgers all the time.
Well,
so
and they
another
should be
reason
praising her for
against
being
the Green New Deal.
sustainable and reusing her plastic comb instead of throwing away a plastic fork.
All right. Meanwhile, turning to this, 3 high-profile celebrities are finding themselves in trouble with the law this morning.
Todd is breaking down the legal drama, beginning with the bombshell overnight. Todd.
Yeah, obviously yesterday, if you were watching TV, the world just blew up with sex cases. We begin with R. Kelly. There he is, R. Kelly, behind bars on 10 criminal sex abuse charges involving underage girls. The disgraced music star turning himself in to Chicago police overnight on accusations dating back to 1998. The embattled singer is accused of assaulting 4 women, at least 3 of which were between the ages of 13 and 17. Kelly's lawyer claims all the women are lying.
2 of the cases are super old, not accurate, not true. He's going to be vindicated on all these charges, one by one if it has to be.
All these felony charges coming just weeks after Lifetime released that documentary everybody's talking about, detailing several sex abuse allegations against Kelly. He has repeatedly denied similar accusations. R. Kelly's going to make his first court appearance later today. He's facing up to 70 years in prison. Now to another big story everybody's talking about. The New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft now facing 2 solicitation charges in Jupiter, Florida. The billionaire businessman allegedly videotaped paying prostitutes on cameras planted by police at a Florida spa. A spokesperson for Kraft releasing a statement that says, quote, "We categorically deny that Mr. Kraft engaged in any illegal activity." The league saying, quote, "The NFL is aware of the ongoing law enforcement matter and will continue to monitor developments." A warrant for Kraft's arrest is expected. Claims he has an unrelated drug problem, now free on a $100,000 bond. Who thought that yesterday the 2 big stories about famous people in the news were not going to involve Jussie Smollett?
I find it interesting that you can blame creating an alleged hate crime on a drug problem, but we'll see how much that pans out and how much sympathy he gets for
It'll
that.
be fascinating to see how much of this continues on the 2020 campaign trail because of the attack on the MAGA hat.
Well, and you have Kamala Harris,
Did she remove
Cory
her tweet
Booker. They haven't removed their tweets, and they really haven't been commenting a whole.
Ron Paul never won the GOP presidential nomination. Bernie Sanders will not win the Democrat nomination. The problem for Bernie is that he's a victim of his own success. Bernie Sanders has so successfully radicalized the Democrat Party, brought it over to the extreme left, had it redefine itself along socialist lines, that now the question is, if every other candidate in the field is spouting the same sort of things that Bernie Sanders does, then why would anybody vote for Bernie Sanders, especially today in a Democrat Party that is obsessed with identity politics? Right. If you've got the same radicalism from everybody, why would you vote for the fairly ancient old white guy?
So, Michael, that's the big question. Every candidate is going to try and define themselves. Bernie Sanders is the original socialist. You have people like Kamala Harris saying, I'm not a democratic socialist. But the question now is, where is Bernie Sanders' lane? A Fox News poll recently showed when you look at socialism versus capitalism, 57% have a favorable opinion of capitalism, and just 25% have a favorable opinion of socialism. So can Bernie Sanders really win not just a primary, but a general election when the majority of the country is staunchly against what he's proposing?
Fortunately for Democrats, the party is so corrupt that they'll probably just rig it again and keep Bernie Sanders out of the election. What really helped Bernie in 2016 is that he was running as the anti-Hillary vote. So he opposed Hillary Clinton and all of her empty promises and all of her wickedness. But today, of course, there are so many other options. If he makes it through, those numbers seem favorable. The majority of the country is not yet socialist. But when you look at the Democrat base, and when you look especially at millennials, the numbers really start to turn. True. Socialism is resurgent. This is a great testament to Bernie Sanders' regressive politics and regressive ideology. But in a general election, I think it's a loser for Democrats.
I don't know, though. Here's the problem with your argument, Michael, and that's this. Sanders won 23 primaries and caucuses last go around, and he was pretty much robbed of it because of the DNC. People are still anti-establishment, so why do you say he won't at least give every other person in this giant field a run for their money?
Because he was running against one of the most despised candidates in all of American history and a perfect mediocrity in Martin O'Malley. Today we have Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, so many others.
Time now for some quick headlines for you. President Trump nominating U.S. Ambassador to Canada Kelly Knight Craft to be the next UN ambassador. The president tweeting in part, Kelly has done an outstanding job representing our nation, and I have no doubt that under her leadership, our country will be represented at the highest level. She will replace Nikki Haley, who resigned last year. And a former American Marine accused of spying in Russia speaks out for the first time since he was arrested in December.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I could do with care packages, food, things like that. Letters from home. No. Any supporters? Letters?
Paul Whelan will stay behind bars for at least 3 more months after a Moscow court extended his detention. He denies all accusations.
Can flag a rag and comparing it to the Nazi swastika. Chambers saying in part, quote, when you show a way to persuade Jews to sanctify and worship the swastika, when you show me that, I'll come up here and stand while you all hypocritically pretend that rag is something that it is definitely not. Fellow State Senator Tom Brewer, who spent over 30 years in the military, had an emotional response to Chambers' remarks.
For those of us that have brought home those that we've lost, it's hard to refer to the flag as a rag because you have to fold it and you have to give it to the parents. That's awful hard to do.
Joining me now, Nebraska Republican State Senator Tom Brewer. Mr. Brewer, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us this morning. The majority of Americans do not serve their country, but I think we all had the same visceral reaction to that statement by Mr. Chambers that you had. But you served 8 tours in Iraq. You had to bring home 3 of your own. What's going through your mind when you hear Mr. Chambers' comments? Old Glory. When you see all that in the aggregate, as somebody who has served our nation and who has given so much and has seen people give so much, what's going on in our country?
To eat on camera, but okay.
I got to tell you, too, Carl's Jr., a West Coast establishment we're talking about as a server. It spends time in California. I love Carl's Jr.
What do you get?
I get a cheeseburger.
I get the one with the onion ring and the barbecue sauce and the bacon. Oh, spectacular.
So and now I'm going to get the donuts. Clearly, a good mashup.
It's a good sugar morning.
Well, now we have our sugar high. Let's get to some of the news of the day with David Webb. Welcome again to the couch. Look, our friend Adam Schiff on the House Intelligence Committee is telling Republicans that they need to kind of come clean about what they're saying. Listen to this and we'll get your reaction.
People will stop me in the corridor, Republicans, and say, keep doing what you're doing.
Really?
Even senior Republicans, which of course would be heresy for them to say publicly, I don't need private confidences, misgivings anymore. We need public statements. We need people to take a stand. We need people to vote their conscience.
Imagine if our production staff run the Mueller probe. It would have been done after 10 minutes. They just cleared out our table like that.
But I kept mine.
Yeah,
I'm not giving up mine.
Do you actually believe Adam Schiff when he says Republicans are stopping me in the dark corners and halls of Congress to tell me that I'm doing the right thing?
No. Show me